WisconsinEye's Campaign 2024 programming is sponsored by Wisconsin Counties Association, Nicolet National Bank, Wisconsin Hospital Association, Operating Engineers Local 139, the Wisconsin Realtors Association, the Wisconsin Laborers District Council, and North Central State's Regional Council of Carpenters. To support programs like this, please consider a tax-deductible donation at wiseye.org/donate or by texting WisEye to 44321.
Shevey of Milwaukee is the independent candidate for the 14th Assembly District. The election is November 5th. Shevey, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Thanks for giving me the chance to, talk about my platforms and some of the issues that Wisconsin is facing.
Sure. Well, tell us, what is your campaign's key message? Why are you running for this office?
Our campaign's key message is moving forward together. We're living in highly partisan times, brought on by both parties, touting an attitude of us versus them. Even though on both sides, everyone wants the same thing. They want a place to call home, they want to be financially stable, and to feel safe. Our campaign is pursuing that agenda.
If elected, what's an example of a bill that you would introduce in the legislature?
There are a lot of bills that I want to introduce.
What's your key priority?
Well, my biggest one is finally legalizing cannabis here in Wisconsin. We are surrounded by states that have already legalized marijuana. It's time for Wisconsin to join them.
So if you are elected to the legislature, you'll be entering the legislature in a biennial budget year. Wisconsin projected to have more than a $3 billion surplus. What would be your top two priorities for the use of that surplus?
Well, we have a 3.1. Their estimates keeps going lower. But rather than, I know the idea of tax cuts were floated. But instead of doing tax cuts, I want to get rid of lead pipes across the state. That's one of my major priorities because we're the highest user of lead pipes in the whole country compared to everyone else. That's why we know the effects that lead has. It lowers IQ, stunts growth in children, and creates behavioral disorders. It's time for Wisconsin to get the lead out.
Are tax cuts or tax reform at all a part of your platform?
Not right now, just because I see this big wad of cash we have up in Madison. I want to do programs to improve the quality of life for Wisconsinites.
K-12 education is a priority for many Wisconsin voters. What's your campaign's top priority for K-12 education?
We have three priorities. The first being is reintroducing and mandating financial literacy classes. These classes would cover a broad topic of subjects from health insurance, introduction to our tax system, what's the difference between a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA, and then also how to access our financial markets. But the two major key objects we want to focus on are credit cards and loans. With credit card debt, it's a serious problem in this country. We collectively have over $1 trillion in credit card debt. So this is a subject that needs to be talked about and educated on. So the course would probably go over how to pinpoint a predatory credit card, because there are thousands of them, and go over the minimum payment. The amount of stories I've heard from people telling me they didn't really understand the minimum payment because they thought, oh, I just pay this and that's it. They didn't know that the rest of their balance would accrue interest, which makes it harder for them to get out of debt as well as hurts their credit score, which leads me into loans. Many of these students will be taking a student loan, a car loan, and eventually a home loan. So we should equip them with a baseline knowledge of the different types of loans, how to budget and manage that term of that loan, and also what will that interest rate do to them in the long term. Lastly, we need to talk about teachers. Wisconsin is facing a teacher shortage, same with the rest of the country. That is, because frankly, it doesn't pay to be a teacher anymore. From the low wages to the long hours, the high entry costs to become a teacher, it's not economically viable. That's why I want to make a program where if any teacher attends a UW system college, graduates with a certain GPA, and works in the public education sector for 5 years, you get your free tuition. That way, we are getting qualified teachers who are putting down roots in the state, which lets us keep that teacher experience and will also help the teacher shortage by enticing those to follow that career.
You bring up Wisconsin's higher education system. What does the future look like for higher ed in Wisconsin? 4-year colleges, 2-year colleges, technical colleges, and what should the legislature focus on in the universities of Wisconsin system?
So from parents who have kids about to go off to college, their big gripe is the tuition costs. We keep seeing it rise year over year. That's where I want to, from talking to college students, they have told me they're taking classes way out of their career path. I talked to one computer programmer who's taking a class about the weather. It has nothing to do with his how he computer or how his career will be. So I want to cut those classes out, which will help lower down tuition costs and will hopefully help more students save money than spend it.
Workforce questions for you. Investments in public and energy infrastructure grow our state's economy. These investments also provide an opportunity to invest in our state's workforce, but currently there are no requirements for hiring local workers. Would you support a state resident hiring requirement for state, local, and utility scale and infrastructure investments?
100%. We have to ensure we're putting Wisconsinites first. We need to hire those who have put roots down in the state, because when we hire out-of-state workers, that money is going to fuel their local economies instead of ours where it is needed.
Employee classification is an issue in the construction industry. Some employers misclassify workers as independent contractors or pay them in cash off the books. This lowers costs by avoiding payroll taxes and unemployment insurance, and it puts compliant companies at a disadvantage when bidding on projects. Plus, misclassified workers may be denied minimum wage protections or overtime pay. Are you aware of this issue and what should be done about it?
Yeah, I'm well aware. I'm an electrician, part of the IBEW, so I know full well what's going on in the construction industry. These companies, that's where I would want to propose, heftier fines on those and revoke licenses, because a law-abiding contractor can't compete with those who use cheap labor. They simply can't. It's pricing out union shops and dragging down wages like you just said. But that's where I would want to impose, those hefty fines and revoke licenses for those who use child labor, which we are seeing in the roofing industry, as well as undocumented migrants. These companies are predatory companies. They purposely look at a migrant and say, oh, if he gets hurt on the job or she, they can't turn to anyone. And they know it, and they purposely exploit them just to line their own pockets.
Housing. Affordable rental housing is an issue in Wisconsin, and some have proposed government-imposed rent control to maintain affordability, while others argue keeping rent artificially low will decrease rental supply, resulting in increased prices. What is your sense of housing as an issue, and which best addresses rental housing affordability? Rent control, or building more rentals, or other?
So this is an issue that needs to be addressed within the next legislation session. For me, rent control is a real possibility, but I think the government has a couple options before we need to actually do that. The first, on the single-family home front, we need to block companies like Vanguard and BlackRock from buying single-family homes. This way, we're increasing inventory space while also helping lower prices. We should also be looking into lease-to-own programs for those who can't afford that steep down payment to be able to acquire a house. On the renter side, I want to go after minimum parking laws that were imposed by municipalities 60 years ago with little to no logic. Here in Milwaukee County, we have used every bit of land. This will help free up land, and in conjunction with that, deregulating zoning laws, which will allow us to build more apartments and homes to fit the needs of Wisconsinites.
Moving on to healthcare. Medical systems are facing numerous headwinds in the form of inflation, workforce development, and issues around Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement, resulting in fewer services and even the closure of a hospital system in western Wisconsin. What would you do to preserve access to care and prevent future closures?
I know everyone points to the legislator and saying, why didn't you accept the Medicaid expansion? I get why. Because if that program ever gets cuts, Wisconsin will be on the hook for millions. So instead, we should be reimbursing hospitals more on our own dime, because we need to make sure our hospitals can function. I think the last statistics said we had 32 hospitals in the red last year. This year it is 65. It's a growing trend that we must quash. So yes, we should hand out more reimbursement to Medicaid program. But if they do take that money, hospitals will have to promise to cut CEOs' pay and give us unfettered access to their financial records so we can see where are these costs growing and how can we mitigate those costs to help Wisconsinites pay for health insurance and medical bills.
Mental health care, growing concern for many Wisconsinites and concern for state and county budgets as well. In your district, what are you hearing on this issue and how would you address mental health care?
It's a real concern, but we need to provide more counselors. We don't have enough, and we're getting counselors who, it's an app now. You log into an app, you talk to a counselor. That's not the real interaction that we need to help people with mental health disorders. But I think it also couples with mental or drug abuse. This is an issue that is still plaguing our country since 2018. We're still dealing with the epidemic of drugs. That's where I want to build more rehab centers to help these people, and we can use that money to help mental health patients at those facilities as well.
Abortion policy. How should Wisconsin move forward on the issue of abortion? Do you have a position on whether there should be different limits and exceptions in the law?
Firstly, Roe v. Wade had it right. They allowed any woman to get an abortion if they wanted one, but they set a threshold at 16 weeks with exceptions to the mother if her life was endangered. My wife and I want to have kids, but I'm terrified that I could lose her because the government is sticking their nose where it doesn't belong.
So there needs to be a change in policy. Transportation. What are the pressing transportation needs in your district, and how important is it that these needs are addressed, and for the state to keep on schedule with the reconstruction of our aging interstates and significant corridors of commerce?
Yeah, bus fare is a big deal in my district. We're working class folks in my district, so a lot of them use the bus to get around. We need to be able to fund that and expand it to other places so they have better job opportunities. But I would rather want to focus on rail systems. Right now, we have high-speed rails that only go 50 miles an hour. That's nothing compared to our European or our Asian counterparts. That's where I want to build high-speed rails so we can connect Wisconsin. And so those who live in Green Bay can now work down here in Milwaukee because it would only be a 30-minute train ride. Or vice versa, Milwaukee can now work out in Green Bay. If we can connect our state, it will boost tourism across the state and help us stay together and feel more connected.
PFAS and other water contaminants are a concern for a growing number of Wisconsinites. Do you see this as an important issue, and how would you propose the legislature address it?
Yeah, it's a real issue that we need to address. I don't know much about it, so I feel if I were to be elected, I would want studies done on how to actually clean it up, how to effectively clean it up so we're not wasting taxpayer dollars like we have seen before. That's where I stand on that issue.
We're coming to the end of our interview. 2 more questions. How would you describe the leading differences between you and your opponents?
Well, both my opponents are backed by the major parties. The same parties that have brought us a shrinking middle class, a cost of living crisis, and a tremendous amount of division. I'm an outsider looking in, and I'm tired of seeing working folks struggle to survive. That's why I'm going door to door, creating a platform that suits everyone, not just those big party donors.
Final question for you today. If you're elected and you have a magic wand you can use in the state capitol to resolve an issue in a way that brings all parties together, what would that issue be?
It would be to end gerrymandering or redistricting. There's no reason to do it in our state. Our state constitution only allows us to have 99 assembly seats and 33 Senate seats. Take my district that I'm currently running in, District 14. Has changed 3 times in the past 4 years. It's not fair to voters. I don't believe legislators should be picking who they get to represent. That's the voters' job.
All right. Thank you, Stephen Shevey of Milwaukee, the independent candidate in the 14th Assembly District. The election is November 5th. Stephen Shevey, thank you for talking with WisconsinEye.
Thanks for having me.
This programming is brought to you by our generous sponsors. Thank you for watching.